Hey, Meet Kevin here. Today I'm going to show you the top 10 most profitable do-it-yourself renovations that you could get started on today. These renovations are designed to cost very little money, but make you a lot of money in home value. So without further ado, let's get right into the top 10 list. Number 1, and this is by far my favorite project, cabinet painting. Most homebuyers or even homeowners look at cabinets like these and they think, wow, this sucks. White tile, grout lines, lame wood, dated looking cabinets. Let's just swing a hammer and demo this so we could just start over already. And while that's really fun, the fun usually comes to a quick stop after you get a quote from a contractor for like $40,000 to put everything back together, and you still end up with a relatively basic kitchen. Want quality? Spend $80,000 to $100,000. And I'll tell you, those are money-losing projects. So let me show you here how cabinet painting can make you a lot of money with very little. Cabinet painting basically takes the old crappy cabinets that you have and transforms them into something new and beautiful. Now, if you're considering cabinet painting, it's super important that you follow my favorite 2 rules for this. And I've made other detailed videos on cabinet painting like this. You can check those out in the link below. But for now, the top 2 rules that I like to follow are, number 1, use a high quality primer and paint. So stick with high quality materials. I like to use a Zinsser cover stain, which can also eliminate the need for you to actually sand the cabinets down, which is really cool. And then obviously also using a high quality top coat material will make your cabinets last long and look beautiful. My second rule of thumb is always make sure you apply the paint with spray. That way you get that nice near factory finish look without actually having to buy new cabinetry. Now look, wiping on stains and brushing your cabinets or rolling on paint might seem like a fun project because you could go to the store, pick up the paint and the brush and get going right away without having to do a lot of prep and spraying. But there's one big lesson you should always remember when it comes to painting. The more prep you do, the more profit you end up making. So just remember, PPP, painting, question mark, prep equals profit, PPP. A project like this is usually going to run you between $200 and $600 depending on the size of the kitchen, the amount of cabinets you have, what other equipment you already have handy, but it's probably going to yield you a profit of somewhere between $5,000 to $15,000. And that's why this tops the list as one of the most profitable do-it-yourself renovations that you could do in your home, well, today. Number 2, Formica foil tops. Yeah, I know Formica and foil doesn't sound super hot, but hey, if you have an older countertop like a butcher block or an older Formica like faux stone countertop that has some old stains on it because your mother-in-law put a hot pot on it and burned some stainage into it, well, fear not. You don't have to tear out that countertop and replace it with a $5,000 to $7,000 stone countertop. Instead, you could just wrap it. With a quick do-it-yourself project, you can now literally wrap your old counters with an adhesive film that you can pick up on Amazon pretty inexpensively. Now, you have to be careful to make sure you don't trap little air bubbles, and you make sure you trim your sheets appropriately. I usually recommend getting a few extra rolls just so you can practice, and if you get a little bit of an imperfection, my best advice is don't keep going hoping nobody notices. Just pull it off, throw the sheet away, and do it again. The foil is so inexpensive, it's not worth it. So get a little bit of the extra material so that you don't feel bad about the learning curve. Once you get a hang of it though, the learning curve shouldn't be too bad, and you should be into this project for less than $200, and this project will probably yield you a profit of somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000, which once you get the hang of it, you can make some pretty quick work of this. You might even be tempted to move into the bathrooms and take a look at those countertops. Though note, this isn't going to be a good, probably at all good solution for any kind of tile countertop. So you've really got to be starting with that butcher block or that Formica top. Now, speaking of tile, have you ever been frustrated by that blue or pink tile, or sometimes even that white tile that you think is white, and then when you look close, it's like this older 80s or 90s like beige speckled white crappy tile? Yeah, well, so have I. But first, quick note, I've been uploading live cheat sheets for almost every single type of renovation on a house or apartment building that you could simply hand to contractors to simplify your renovations, ease your decision-making process, and speed up coordinating repairs, saving you thousands to tens of thousands of dollars with the detailed tips and tricks in these documents. These documents are just a bonus to the over 180 video lectures in the management program. These documents come from a decade of experience coordinating hundreds of rental renovations, learning how to save money. And so if you are not yet a member of the Do-It-Yourself Property Management and Rental Renovations program, take a look at the link below, consider using that coupon code, and also consider joining the program on how to invest in real estate starting with $0 to finally get your net worth over $1 million. Fortunately, there's a really cool do-it-yourself project that can make quick work of crappy tile like this. And it's basically painting your tiling. Now, while it's not technically called painting your tiling, it's considered refinishing or reglazing your tiling. You could make quick work of a bathtub, for example, and turn a pink or blue or any colored tile bathtub into a beautiful, polished-looking bathtub over a weekend. Now, you can pick up kits for this on Amazon or Home Depot. I just recommend that if you are going to do this, you don't use the little foam roller that comes with the kit. I really recommend you either buy or rent an airless sprayer. Now, I just want to caution you when I say buy an airless sprayer, be careful that you don't end up like me, who's the kind of person that will do a do-it-yourself project and buy a new tool for every job I do, and then I end up with an entire storage unit full of tools that I used for one project. Now, another important tip, make sure you get rid of all that old nasty caulking that has like mildew and grease on it. You want to get rid of that old stuff before you do any kind of spraying or applying of this material, because A, you don't want to trap that crap, and B, you could end up with an improper finish if you don't prep properly. Remember what I said about the 3 Ps of painting? Well, it applies here as well. Now, for this project, you might be out around $100 to $250, but you might be able to generate a value by transforming your bathroom of somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000. Eliminating those older tile colors can really transform the look and feel of a bathroom, really modernizing something relatively quickly. Now, sometimes people will make the argument, but what's the longevity of something like this? I've personally found the longevity to be in excess of 6 years in my experience. I've heard that it lasts longer, and even properties where I've done this project on that are now 6 years old, they still look great. Some people say this can last as long as 10 to 15 years, but the way I look at it is, hey, you know what? If I have to redo it after even 7 to 10 years, no problem. It's way cheaper than actually replacing all of the tiling. See, I found that real estate is all about figuring out where you could spend the least amount of money to make the most amount of money. Usually we go in thinking, okay, well, if I want to do a home improvement, I'm gonna have to spend 50 grand on a really high quality new bathroom setup in the master, in the hallway, in the third bathroom, and we're gonna spend 50 grand, but we're gonna have the most awesome 3 bathrooms ever. Well, usually the less you spend, the more you make. Keep that in mind when it comes to real estate. Number 4, scraping ceilings. Now, you've probably heard of this before, that old popcorn on your ceiling, also known as acoustic ceiling. It's pretty ugly, and the selling pitch back in the day was, oh yeah, it'll help minimize reverb in your rooms because it's kind of like soundproofing, like the foam on the wall right there. See, it's got more texture. When in reality, it was just a cheap way to finish ceiling drywall. It was a really easy and cheap way for builders to get away with finishing projects really fast because it hides a world of sin. Scraping this can be a really high return on your investment do-it-yourself project. But there's a special note. If your property was built before 1978, possibly even as late as 1980, 1981, somewhere around there, you still see it, your acoustic ceiling might contain asbestos. Now, you can easily test if your ceiling has asbestos. I recommend the first thing you do is buy yourself a P100 respirator. I'll put a link for one down below. Make sure you're using the toxic dust filter. You don't want like a vapor filter or some kind of generic filter on there. You want toxic dust. put on some gloves, and go take a small little sample of the acoustic ceiling by scraping it into a Ziploc bag. Go ahead and wrap that up, send it on to a company like Western Analytical Laboratory in Los Angeles, along with a check for somewhere around $50, and they'll email you whether or not you've got asbestos in these fibers. Now, if you do, usually the best thing to do is to hire a professional, but if you want to scrape these ceilings yourself, you can. Just make sure that you do the proper research so that you're not only wearing the proper P100 filters, but you're testing the fit on them appropriately, you're renting and operating some good triple filter HEPA filtration machines to really get the air out of there. You can pretty inexpensively and cheaply set up a negative air pressure containment. It's really easy. I know that sounds complicated, but basically you're putting a bag around the room you're working in, and then you're sucking air out of the room by blowing it out of a window. That way, when you exit the room, air comes into the room rather than letting air escape out of the room. This way, the only way air is actually getting out is through a nice filter unit. Now, remember, when it comes to scraping ceilings, you are working overhead, so I recommend you start with a small space, like a 1 bedroom at a time. I know that might not give you the benefit of scale, but you might want to break this project up into different segments in your house, so that way you could get one part of your house done every weekend that you decide to work on this. The cool thing about this project is it's relatively low cost. You're mostly just spending money on drywall materials so you could skim coat the ceiling afterwards, and a really good drywall primer so you don't get that orange or yellow staining that might sometimes come through from older drywall or even older nicotine stains. Now, because most of this job is labor, expect to spend somewhere between $200 to $300 in material for drywall and the primer, and the rest is on you. And that's where you're going to build that sweat equity. Having some nice, smoothly troweled ceilings throughout your property, or even with a light texture on it, rather than that darn older acoustic, could modernize your property so much that you could see a benefit of $4,000 to $8,000 in your property's value. Now, by far, one of my favorite things to do in a house is remove older 1.5 to 2.5 inch baseboards and replace them with a nice 4 to 5 inch craftsman style baseboard. These are all the rage in my property management course, and I teach you tricks for getting discounts on the material for these and maximizing your value with flooring installs. But notice too that you can actually take these baseboards around window frames as well as door frames and really class up a property dramatically just by adding some very inexpensive molding. Now, a project like this will usually run you around $400 for baseboard material and paint, plus obviously some nails and the nail gun rental and the air compressor rental. But beyond that, you should be able to capitalize on an additional $3,500 to $4,500 in market value for your property. Now, this is a pretty easy one, yet very few people do it. Getting rid of the old door hardware hinges and cabinetry knobs and closet knobs around your property can make a dramatic improvement to the value of your home. Now, these things are relatively inexpensive themselves, and you could start with some basic things like quick set lock sets, some bronze hinges or brushed nickel hinges, and closet door inserts, so that way you're not replacing doors, all you're really doing is classing up the metal. But remember, most value is generated by what people can touch and feel, not things that are behind the walls or structural things like a solid door versus a hollow core door. So you want to focus on what are people touching and feeling. And if you can get away with inexpensive upgrades there, you're going to generate value. And folks, value is what I'm all about. A whole house project here is usually going to cost you somewhere around $500 to $700 in material, but you could be classing up the property with the value of $3,000 to $4,000. And I know that sounds excessive, like seriously, door handles are going to do that, but the feeling is what you're going for, that consistent, wow, everything feels and looks new. That's what generates value in real estate. Okay, I know this one might sound basic, but you'd be surprised how many people sell houses without updating the mulch in their landscaping. So number 7 is getting some fresh bags of mulch. You could usually get 10 bags of mulch for like $30 on sale at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's not that hard to do the work yourself. If you're worried about the staining that comes off of like that red mulch on your hands, put on some gloves, some garden gloves. I wouldn't recommend like the doctor disposable gloves because they're gonna tear super fast. But get some gardening gloves on. Heck, buy yourself a pair of gardening gloves. And all of a sudden you spend $30 on mulch plus a $10 pair of gloves. Boom, you're in $40, yet you're probably generating around $1,000 to $1,500 in market value for the property just by freshening up the look and feel of the property. Remember, psychology. Number 8, light electrical. So where do you make the money in electrical? Well, you gotta get rid of those yellowed light switches and those yellowed outlets and swap these out with some nice Decora switches. Maybe even go with those screwless faceplates that they sell on Amazon, although that could be a little bit of an over improvement. They do look really nice. Spending just $1,000 on outlets, switches, and some basic light fixtures could oftentimes transform your property's value by the amount of $4,000 to $5,000 just by that general impression that you're now giving off. Just remember, if you decide to tackle this yourself, remember, safety in electrical is all about resistance. So get yourself some rubber-soled shoes, some good handy work gloves, and some long-sleeve shirts. Don't sue me, bro, if you get shocked though. I'm not an electrician. You could also now consider installing can lights or pot lights, as they're called in some parts of the country or world. However, I've actually stopped using the larger can lights, the ones that come with a big gray actual can, because they're a lot more work, they create more drywall damage, and my favorite tool of choice these days is installing 4 to 6 of these kind of can lights in living rooms or hallways because there's no actual can anymore. They're super easy to install, you minimize that risk of drywall damage, and they make for very quick work. The danger though is if you get inexpensive ones from Amazon or eBay, you might actually have to replace the LED portion after 2 to 3 years. That's really frustrating because they're rated for like 20 to 25 years. So try to get a reputable brand so that way if your LEDs do go out, you've got a warranty that you can call in on. Adding 6 cans in your living room, for example, might cost you somewhere around $300, but you might also generate somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000 of value by transforming the spaciousness and the feel of your property. By the way, I highly recommend you install these cans on a dimmer switch and try to go with 100-watt cans. This way you really have that flexibility and range of lighting. Number 10, so you think your property needs to be repainted. Well, consider giving your property a really nice refresh by pressure washing it. You can rent a pressure washer for around $100 per day, maybe spend $20 on some chemicals and another $10 in gas, and for a $130 investment, you could probably refresh a property by the look of about $1,000 to $2,000. I like to throw on a bathing suit, and hey, all of a sudden you've got yourself a project that can actually be kind of fun and quick to do as well. Just make sure that after you're done pressure washing, you give those windows a nice wipe down, otherwise you'll get a bunch of usually hard water stains on the windows, and that's not super fun. So be careful, limit your fun a little bit around the windows, but overall, you'd be surprised how much you could actually clean up brick, stucco, or siding built houses with a quick pressure wash. Most houses accrue so much dust, debris, and dirt and spider webs over time that a good pressure wash after a few years makes a world of a difference. Well, folks, there you have my top 10 list. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at meetkevin. Subscribe to the channel if you like lists like this, and hey, we'll see you next time.